Okay. Well, hello everyone. This is Dana Stitson. I'm going to be talking about recurring entries in Sage 300 and how it's typically used and appropriate way people set it up. Now, we're going to be looking at sample data today, and I'm logging in on the 1st of January of 2020. Now, there are recurring entries in 3 places inside of Sage 300. There's an accounts payable, accounts receivable, and the general ledger. And all 3 of these make use of the scheduling facility that's under common services, and it's called scheduling, strangely enough. And we're going to schedules. We can see that there's a couple of schedules set up in here already. You can have as many as you like. One of them is called monthly, and the other one's weekly. You could actually have multiple monthly schedules if you wanted to or needed to. Now, looking at this schedule facility that's down here, that's a monthly one, so it's set recurring periods to be monthly, and the frequency is every 1 month. You can also set it as being every 3 months if you wanted to make a quarterly type of schedule. Also, we select what day of the month that we want our recurring entry to appear on, and you have from the first to the last and any one of the days in between. Okay? So in sample data, it's set to the first of the month, and it will take place every month. Now, while you have the schedule open, if you're looking under details, it shows you the entries that are associated with this particular schedule, this monthly schedule. And in here, there's 4 of them. I've inactivated some of these, but as you can see, there's 3 of them in GL and 1 from accounts payable. So the schedule will interact with any of the subledger recurring entries, as well as the GL. Okay. Now, also, we can add something called a reminder, and for the sake of the demo, I'm going to remind all users so you can see what that's done. And I'm going to say that I want it to remind me 3 days in advance of the scheduled start date, and I'm going to say, put it up to 2020, which is what I'm logged into. Okay? So I want a reminder in 3 days. Now, what does that mean? Well, I'm going to change the other one, too, to be the same thing so you can see what I'm talking about. What the reminder is all about. A weekly schedule, by the way, has a couple of entries associated with it, too, one in AP and one in AR. Okay, now, what this means, what that schedule reminder is about, is when I log into Sage, and I'm one of the people that wants to remind, and I log in, and I'm going to log in this case, 12, 20, I will say 29, 19. Okay. Now, because that's in that 3-day window, this guy pops up, and it says this schedule is, I'm being reminded to process this schedule. And I'm 3 days ahead of time, but it's still going to process it for January. Now, the point here is if I pop into here, I can see the schedule itself. I can also see the details of what's associated with it. So I can choose to do nothing. This is a reminder, and it's do personal schedules. If I look at do assigned schedules, or excuse me, all personal schedules, it's going to show me both. Okay, and in this case, the weekly one isn't set to run until the 6th because of the way it's set up, and I'll show you that. If we look at the schedule, look at the weekly schedule, you can see that I'm reminding 3 days in advance of the scheduled start date, but the next run date is actually on a Monday. Okay? Because weekly setup is weekly, every 1 week on Monday of each week. And that Monday turns out to be January 6th. So I want really reminded, if I log in on, say, 01/04/20, now I'm getting a reminder for both, because this guy has the next run date, the weekly has the next run date of the 6th. Okay. Now, we're going to talk about that in a minute. Now, I'm going to elect to do nothing right now. I'm just going to show you the recurring entries now. If we're looking at an accounts payable entry, and it's done under vendors, where we set up recurring payables. Let's have a look at what they look like. And in here, there's a couple of them. One of them is inactive. I inactivated that one. They're just looking at this one here, which is associated with this vendor in accounts payable. It's connected to the monthly schedule. The start date is January 1st, so that's when it wants to run. There's no expiration date on this. I could set an expiration date if I wanted to. We'll look at another one in a minute that has that. So the rest of this is basically information about the invoice that it's going to book, because the recurring payable is actually an invoice entry that we made in a batch. It doesn't post it for you. It just creates the invoice in an accounts payable batch. And if you had a bunch of these, it would create a whole bunch of them in the same batch. Now, but, you know, terms, this probably looks familiar to you from the accounts payable side of things. Detail, well, down here it's office rent. It's the GL account, $6,500. It's the rent for the warehouse. It also has optional fields on it. There's taxes in here, although the tax calculation doesn't need to calculate anything. It also stores statistical information as to how many times this has been run, this particular recurring payable, over its life. So that's information saved in there. Now, and when we create a recurring payable, it has to create a document number, an invoice number, if you will. Well, those come from over here under AP options. If I look at numbering, recurring payable is right at the top of the list, and its length is 22 in this case. The prefix is RP for recurring payable, and it's going to start with the number 1. So what we're going to end up with is a document RP with a bunch of zeros and a 1 at the end of it, in this case. And then the next one will be 2, and so on and so forth. So because invoice numbers have to be unique, that's what this is doing, it's just counting up. So they'll be unique in every case. Now, and the notion of a recurring payable is really one where you're not dealing with a document anyway. You know, a rent, and not an invoice, if you will. So rent is an example of that. And you know, you don't get an invoice from the landlord. It's usually if anything, you get a statement, if you get anything at all. And in many cases, you don't get a document. So it has to create its own document. And that's what recurring payables does in all cases. It creates its own document numbers. Okay. Now, that's accounts payable side of things. And it books your ordinary, and it creates an invoice in a batch way, and you'll see it in a minute. Now, accounts receivable, something unusual about accounts receivable under options, and this is not so in accounts payable, it's just AR, actually. Under processing, there's a switch right here where you can tell it whether you're going to process recurring charges. If this is not on, this isn't checked, then the recurring charges processing is not available in AR. Doesn't even show. Okay? So go in AR and you're considering using the recurring invoice situation in AR, then you want to make sure that's turned on, otherwise you won't be able to. Now, in AR, under customers, just like it was under vendors up here, is where we set up our recurring charges. And there's one in here called on-call. Again, this is a sample data, so bear with me. It's associated with the weekly schedule, which is every Monday, if you remember. Okay? And it has an expiration date of the end of the year, in this case, okay? A specific date. I could also say number of invoices if I wanted, or maximum amount, okay? Or no expiration. So, but it's got a specific date on it, which means it won't, this will not continue making any recurring charges, recurring billing in AR after that date, unless you extend that date, which you can also have that option too. Now, in here, under details is where we put the detail of the invoice. In this case, it's a summary style invoice. That is, accounts receivable has this notion of items. It doesn't do an inventory. It's kind of like a price list, you know, items with prices associated with it. And you can do that too. In this case, it's just distribution codes with an amount and a GL revenue account and so on. Now, you can also put in comments here, going to optional fields and what have you. Now, what I'm going to do here, this is a summary tile. What we're going to do is we're going to create one in a moment. It's the detail side, so you can see what I'm talking about. Optional fields associated with it, salespeople that are associated with this customer are included here. Sales taxes are calculated, and statistics. Okay. Again, it tells me how many times this has been run and what the amount, what it amounts to in sales. So there's some statistical information going on in the background now. Okay, so I'm going to save that, but I'm going to create a new one. And we're going to call it Equip Rent. Okay. And we'll do it for the same customer, I guess. And it's going to be Equipment Rental. And we'll associate it again with the weekly one, just like the other one. And the start date, we'll make it the 1st of January. We'll give it an expiration date of the 12/30, I guess. 31, like it was before. As terms, I can put personal instructions and so on down here. But over on this detail side of things, the other one was a summary style invoice. This is going to be, this defaults to an item style. And you can't have a mixture on the same invoice. It has to be one or the other. But when I'm having an item style, I now have this list of items that I can bill for. Okay, and I don't know. Well, not really anything in here appropriate, but let's see. Custom furniture. Now we'll pick custom furniture. Now, when you pick the item, it fills in some information here. Okay. Now, where this stuff comes from is under AR, under items. Remember, I said AR has items, and this is where we set those up. So, custom furniture, whatever. This is the pricing and the costs. You're not required to put costs. You can if you like, and you can have multiple units of measure here too. And tax status and statistics. Okay, so this, again, let's keep track of the sales of that particular item, statistic-wise. Okay, so here we put in an item, and we'll change that to 2 just for less. Okay, now I can put in optional fields and what have you. I'm just going to add this to the system. Now we now have 2 recurring charges in AR. And One's a summary style and one's a item style. Now, associated with the weekly schedule. Now, if accounts payable is fine now. The GL recurring entries are under setup. Take a look at what we have in here. We have these I kind of inactivated these. So we're going to create one. And we're going to call this insurance. Prepaid insurance, actually. And we're going to associate with the monthly schedule. I'll make it start the first of the year. And we'll expire again on December 31st. Record insurance expense. Okay. So, and in here, we're going to make this a GL entry, journal entry. And of course, in here, what I'm doing is I'm selecting, in this case, some prepaid accounts. Here we are, prepaid insurance. And we're going to credit prepaid insurance, $100. And we're going to put it under insurance. There we are. $100. Now, I can have many lines here if I want. Again, it's just going to create an entry for me. But I can have many lines here, and I can have multiples of these. They're run, in this case, once a month. And in this event, with this type of setup, I'd be really posting my prepaid insurance bill to this account 1400, and then this recurring charge would relieve that prepaid insurance account on a monthly basis for the amount for the month's worth. Okay, so we're going to close this guy and we're going to add that. Okay, now let's see what happens here. I'm going to go into log back in again. Log in on the 4th again. All right, okay. And it says, well, there are two schedules. We have the weekly and the monthly. Right? Neither one of them have a last run date. So I'm going to run the monthly one. And by the way, if I pop this open and look at details, I can see that I have my warehouse is going to run, and this insurance one that I just added. The others are inactivated at this point because I don't want them to interfere. Okay, so if I look on this and I hit process, okay, processed 2 applications, and now the last run date was my January 1st start date of my schedule. Okay. Now let's go look what that did. And again, if I look at the schedule and details, it's telling me that my accounts payable, rent, and the general ledger entry was created. Okay. Now, over in accounts payable, under invoice batches, there's my rent. And there's my document number that I predicted was going to show up, $6,500. The document date is the 1st, okay? And terms are net 30, so due date at the end of the month. Okay, so that showed up automatically, and I can, and if I needed to, by the way, because in some cases you have recurring charges where, or recurring entries where the amount changes every month. Well, keep in mind that this does not post this entry. It creates it for you. And then you can just change this to whatever it has to. And this is the same for all the recurring entries. You don't have to always use the same amount. You can change the amount. In fact, I see clients that create a whole bunch of GL entries, and all the GL entries have zeros on them. So they just want those GL entries to be set up to have the appropriate GL accounts required, and then they just fill in the entries as they need to once the entries are created. Okay. So, and that's very common. All right. Now, so I'm going to go ahead and post this. I think it's going to let me do that. Now, create a GL entry. That's fine. Now, over in the GL, there's my accounts payable entry that I just posted. This is the other one, recurring entry. Open that, and it predictably looks exactly like this. Prepaid insurance is credited, insurance is expensed. Okay, so it's taking the insurance from the prepaid account to this account. Now go ahead and post that. So okay. So, and that's the type of entry that can happen every month. Now, I'm going to show you something that that's another important aspect of recurring entries. And recurring entries, when you set to a schedule, they are they want to be created every period of the schedule. So if I were to do this, and I'm going to log in now, and we're going to go in as, I'm going to skip February, I'm going to go right to March. And this guy pops up, okay? It says monthly schedule, and last run date was January. Notice it says the run date is 3/1, okay, that's fine. If I highlight this one and I hit process, process 2 application details. Okay. If I go back now, let's go look in our accounts payable. Invoice batch list. Well, strangely enough, they created 2 invoices. And they pay. One for February, one for March. Okay. 2 identical entries, different document numbers, up to 3 now. Okay. So the point is that if you didn't process the recurring entries in February, you kept, every time it popped open, you just ignored it and went on. When you finally do it, it's going to catch up. If I were to log in now, if I post these and log in, say in the end of the year, you would record entries for the rest of the month, start right up to the end of the year. Okay. Now the same holds true over in GL. So if I look at the GL transactions, I find $200, not 100. Okay. 2 entries, one for February, one for March. Okay. Find catch up. And once again, these can be changed. You can add more detail to the entries if you need to. So it's perfectly acceptable to do that. Now, I'm going to post these guys too. Post that. Now, we haven't run the receivables one yet, or the weekly batch, I should say. Now, looking at the weekly schedule, we have one of these is these are the two that'll run. I disabled this one, I think, anyway. Unpayable. Let me take a look at that. Excuse me. Yeah, that's inactive, so that won't run. Okay, now, so if I were to log in again, and this time, remember, the first one's going to be on the 6th. If I went in on, I don't know, let's say February, I wonder, February 6th, I guess. Sure. That does right. Okay, now, this is telling me my next run date is 2/30, so it actually wants to run January 6th, then the 13th, the 20th, the 27th, and then February 3rd. So if I process two application details, those are those two receivable entries. I went into AR. We find 10 of them, and this is the labor one. So there's 5 of the labor ones. We got 13th, 20th, 27th, February 3rd. Then followed by, now these are the item ones, because they have more information here. And again, same 5 days. Okay. The 6th through February 3rd. And because it's playing catch up, because I didn't run it every week, well, now it's playing catch up and it wants to produce them for all the weeks that were skipped. Now, these, by the way, also are printable, or accounts receivable invoice. If I were to print the invoice, I'm printing to screen. There's this out-of-the-box invoice thing up here. We'll see in a second. And there's my invoice, including sales taxes down there. So, you can also print the invoices after they're posted, of course. If I go back to my summary style invoice, I get one of those too. Invoice looks a little bit different because there's no item involved. It's just a distribution and comments and so on. So, and, okay. So basically that's some of the recurring charges. Now, where do I see it used a lot? I see used, well, if you have recurring billing and accounts receivable, this certainly does a good job of it. And, it won't let you forget. You'll run the billing on a regular basis, as you should. Just as a reminder again, under setup options, you have to select under processing that you actually process recurring charges. Now, another thing that happens on a monthly basis in a lot of organizations is statement preparation. And if you calculate interest, then that process can be done as well on a monthly basis. But that type of stuff is not associated with a schedule. The scheduling process down here under common services is only for recurring charges. It's the only thing it's used for. And again, they're in payables, receivables, and general ledger. Now, the general ledger recurring payables, the one that we generated here, was recording prepaid insurance. expensing it, taking it out of the prepaid insurance account and expensing it to the insurance expense. Now, I see a lot of people using prepaid expense accounts. I suggest that if you do so, that you add prepaid accounts in the GL for each one of those types of expenses. In other words, you can see down here in sample data, you got prepaid insurance, prepaid taxes, prepaid rent, and so on. Okay, it's 3. Now, and there's no harm in adding as many as you need. Now, some people will just put something in. Some clients will just create an account called prepaid expenses, and they lump all the expenses in that one account. Well, that's kind of okay. You're missing some of the detail. You get these GL entries in there, and when it comes time to file tax returns, as an example, you have to list prepaid expenses, the contents of your prepaid account. And if you have them separated, it's a much easier task, because you can see the expenses, the prepaid expenses put in there in July of last year, and it's being expensed throughout over the next 3 years, depending on what it is. Okay? So I strongly recommend that you keep your prepaid expenses separate in separate GL accounts, just as they would be separate on the expense side. Okay? And it's just easier to manage. And from the financial reporting standpoint, there's no limit to the number of GL accounts that you can have. It doesn't affect the performance of the system at all. It just gives you a better way to keep track of stuff. So, and while I mentioned that thing about the recurring, the interest charges, I want to mention that too. While I'm here, it's not really a recurring charge, but under receivables, under setup, we have interest profiles. And an interest profile is assigned to people, assigned to customers, rather, and we tell it where the interest account is, the interest revenue, how you want to calculate it. You want to charge it, you might want to charge it on interest that are 15 days overdue instead of 0 days overdue. Now, 0 days overdue, if you're doing it by document, you're doing it by balance, or whatever. So if you're calculating interest on 15 days overdue, that means that the document itself has to be overdue. If you were net 30, if you're offering net 30 terms, then it wouldn't calculate interest on that document until it was at 45 days, 15 days beyond the due date. Okay. Now, down here, we say what the minimum interest charge is and what the interest rate is and whether you compound interest. And by that, we mean that ultimately you're going to charge interest on previous month's interest if you do that. Okay, so that's typical. Now, then we take these profiles and we assign them to the customers, and you have to have, this is actually a required thing for the customer, and in here under processing, among other things, we have an interest profile assigned. Okay, now this happens to be a national account, but let's go with somebody different. All right, so we have this interest profile, and this is assigned to Ron Black. So I'm assuming that he has a balance. He does, probably pretty old. Sample data. Ron Black's my like the favorite guy to use in sample data. All right, now if I were to and his interest rate, I think it was the one I was just looking at actually. Retail. Okay, so how does this work? Well, this is a process that you run if you were doing monthly statements, and let's say, let's say I do, I could open twice. Huh, that's silly. Okay, so I'm going to open a company again. We're going to go in on, I'll go on the 31st of January. And let's say that I process statements at the end of the month. Now, what we're dealing with, and we charge finance charges. Okay, so the first thing we would do is we're going to periodic processing, and we would create an interest batch. And again, this is one of those situations where it creates the batch, but it does not post it. Okay? And for this demo, I'm just going to do for a particular customer, and we're going to do it for our buddy Ron. Posting date, run date. Okay, you can fill in optional fields too if you want. Process, whoops, no records processed. Well, that's kind of interesting. Well, that might be because let's see. Let me go look at Ron Bog again. 19. Print statements. Oh, take a look at it. We'll take a look at his aging here real quick. Maybe he doesn't have anything overdue at that point. I got some stuff that's pretty old. Okay, let's see. Maybe I typed something correctly. Oh, credit processing, create interest batch. Page document balance. There we go. One interest invoice was created. It creates an invoice, an interest invoice for all the customers that apply when you're running that now. And those interest invoice shows up in an invoice batch, just like this one. Okay? And in here it's saying, well, it's calculating invoice, calculated 24.36. Wow. Doesn't seem like a lot for 31,000. I'm missing something. Anyway, the point is that this calculates the interest for you. And again, it's one of these things you need to post to be reflected on the statement. And of course, to create the GL entry to record the interest, the finance charge. So now, that's posted. Now, let's go into the statement now. And customers, by the way, another point about statements, is under processing, there's this check mark called print statements. If that's not checked, then it won't print any statements. And so that's on the customer record. If you set up customer groups, when you add a customer to the system, it adopts all the settings that are assigned to the customer group that they belong to. And I can tell it, right here. Sorry. I can tell it that it's set to group the print statements. Well, that means that as we add customers to the system, if they belong to this group, they'll automatically have the print statements turned on. Okay, when you add them to the system. So that's the easiest way to do that, to make sure that everybody gets a statement that should be. So, and the statements are under customer reports. And looks like we have a custom statement here. We're going to go back and pick something new. AR. The statements are a GL account, a crystal report rather, and can be modified to suit. Let's try this. Now we're going to print the statement for our buddy on. And there it is. And you can see that the interest that we charge shows up here with an own document. Document number, although it's not big enough to reflect the right number, shows any payments and that sort of thing. So this is the basic statement that comes out of the system. Okay. All right. And after I print it, it asks me whether the statement's printed successfully. Now, if I say yes, it actually marks the customer record as to what the statement balance was when you printed this statement. That's actually recorded on the customer file. Okay. Don't know if you can see that over here. Oops, that's reports. Get this guy popping up. Activity. Don't know that it shows here. Oh yeah, here it is. It says here, last statement balance. Now there's nothing there yet because I haven't accepted the statement. Okay, and the last statement date. So this information will be recorded if I say yes. If I say no, it brings me to, well, I'll say no so you can see what happens there. If I say no, it brings me to this screen, and this could be a list of statements. I just did one in this case. And I could say, well, statements printed successfully, and that's saying that, and if I said, well, no, it didn't, then I want to cancel it. I can include it on this side and hit cancel. Okay? And then proceed, and it'll cancel the fact that that statement was printed. But if I leave it over here and I said proceed, you're not supposed to do anything. Do you want to proceed? Yes, I do. And it basically updated the records. Said, well, that was fine. You know, and if I go over to the customer record, we now have last statement balance and the last statement date. That's recorded on the customer file. And that information becomes important too, because if you have balance forward type customers, it uses that last statement balance is balance forward. And the next statement. Okay. So that's the interest charge stuff, but I know that wasn't about recurring charges, but hey, you know, kind of on the same thing. It's kind of a monthly type arrangement. Now, as a practical matter, years ago, the software used to have you run a monthly process to update statistics and that type of information. You know, a monthly closing, if you will. that hasn't existed in quite a long time now. There really isn't a monthly process, at least nothing that the software is forcing you to do. You can still have an operational close for yourself, but there's nothing in the subledgers that are going to cause you to do something on a monthly basis that you would not be able to do otherwise. Under periodic processing in both AP and AR, we got create GL batch if you're not doing that automatically. The recurring write-off batch, that's another interesting thing that you can do. Write-off batches in AR, it adjusts small amounts off the accounts receivable for you. It creates an adjustment batch that you post. Again, it creates the batch, doesn't post it. And it creates a list of adjustments that adjusts off small balances off your AR, so you don't have to go through and do it by hand. Things like, somebody overpaid you by 5 cents, or they underpaid you by a nickel or something. Then, so they got an invoice out there with a balance of 11 cents. And you want to get rid of it. Well, that's a handy way to do that. You can do it across your whole AR system at the same time. You don't have to do the entire AR. You can also select by customer number and just do it for a specific customer or what have you. You can also tell it what type of transactions you want to adjust off. So it's a nice process actually. It works pretty well. But there's nothing in here from the monthly standpoint. There is a year-end process. I'll talk about that in a second. But clear history, something that some people do during the end of a month or periodically. Frankly, I see most people save history almost forever, and the system is certainly able to do that. You can save history for a very, very, very long time. Even the GL will maintain full detailed history for 100 years, which is a long time. Anyway, update recurring charges. Oh, here's one. I forgot about that one. Update recurring charges. I can change recurring charge. That is, well, here, I'll show you one by one. I could say I get these two guys in here, and one of them is the equipment rental, and I can say, well, that's for this customer. To this customer. I can change by percentage or by amount, and increase and decrease. So one of the either percentage or amount, increase or decrease, and the change in the distribution amount. Okay, and what this is doing, yes, don't stop doing that. What this is doing is it updates your billing, if you like. I say I want a percentage increase, and I'm going to say 5%. And I want to do just a specific distribution code or all details. I'll do all details. But so this is just the equipment renting that we had. Okay. Equipment rent. If I process, no, I didn't do that. Oh, maybe I get the wrong customer selected. That might be it. Let me see that. Recurring charges, equipment, that's by customer. Let me go try that again. Periodic update recurring charges, equipment. That's the right customer. Will change by percentage, increase, change in distribution amount. Actually, the equipment was not a. The equipment was a detail one, not an item one, not a summary. I think this was just dealing with summaries. So let's look at this one. Distribution. We're going to set this to all details. Let's see what this does now. Now, under recurring charge, it is on call, labor is $150. So we're going to increase it 5%. Process completed. Okay, if I go back to that recurring charge, up to $157.50, so that's correct. So the point there is that it does the distribution codes style, the summary style updates. The item style update is it does not do this recurring charge. Doesn't manage that. So, recurring charge update rather. Okay. So I guess what I'm saying is that the month-end stuff really doesn't exist so much. I mean, you could write off batch. That might be something you do monthly, you know, to clear that information. But again, you're not forced to do it. Year-end, this is kind of a something to be careful of, because resetting batch numbers, clearing activity statistics, and clear recurring year-to-date statistics. Well, that's the recurring charge stuff. Clear activity statistics, what that is, if I look at the customer record, I look at statistics, I have, well, a few things here. One is I have this activity screen where it's saying high balance this year compared to high balance last year. Okay. Well, if I'm at year end, what I'd want to do is I'd set this down to here, you know, this year to last year, so that and this is zeroed out. Okay. So the point here is that you know the last year becomes last year's information, and the only way that happens is through this process over here, clear activity statistics. Okay. Reset batch numbers. It's going to throw up this big warning message. This removes all transaction history for the batches you select. Okay. Now, what that means is when I'm in the accounts receivable invoice batch list, and I see this, I'm gonna go ahead and post this guy, the recurring charge batch. Okay. And we got this interest batch here too, and there's other batches up here too. Well, the point is this AR batch information is part of the drill down. So if I were to look in this batch right here, I can see account 4,000, okay, it's $150, all right, and that was in January. Well, if I go into my GL, oops, under accounts, and I go to 4,000, my sales account. Now, I have some entries here. There's a, did it not get posted? No, maybe I didn't get post that. That's right, I didn't post it in GL. Yeah, AP and GL. Oh, you know, GL integration. See, this is set. No, this drives me crazy when it does that. Sample data is set to create GL entries just in accounts receivable on request, which is something you need to do in periodic processing, but honestly, I never set it up that way. The sample data does. Okay. I created some GL entries. Yeah, there we are. So I got this guy. I'm going to post these guys. Post all, yes. Okay. Now, where I was going with that, back in the first place, is if I go to account 4000, I have these entries, and I look at these entries over here. And what I got in my GL now is I have some, that's an interest entry at $10.33. These are some recurring invoices that we generated. Okay. Now, if I double click on that, I have to drill down to the general ledger entry. So here on this side, I'm looking at the revenue account and accounts receivable. When I drill down on an entry, I can see the entire GL entry, which account 4000 was part of. The other side was accounts receivable and some sales taxes. Okay. Well, this guy right here says drill down from this entry. This brings me to the accounts receivable invoice entry, which happens to be in batch 38, and this is the first entry. Okay. Well, back over in accounts receivable, if I were to look in batch 38, at entry number 1, I'm looking at the same thing. So the idea where I'm going with that is in the GL, when you start the GL and you drill down to the accounts receivable or accounts payable or inventory or any of the sub-ledgers, okay, it actually brings you to the actual invoice entry. And it does that by bringing you to the batch, in this case, in accounts receivable, brings you to the invoice batch, batch 38, okay, one of those 10 entries. If during year-end processing, over here, clear statistics, oops, not clear statistics, clear history. No, that's not a year-end. If I were to reset batch numbers in AR, it basically removes all the batches, deletes all the batches. Okay, you start back with batch number 1 on all the individual batches. So this is one of those things you probably, I don't even know that, I don't believe they let you do this, but don't do that because you're gonna regret it afterwards. Clearing activity statistics, well, that's that reset, which I think of the activity from this year to last year, and that's perfectly acceptable. Clear recurring charge year-to-date statistics. Not really something I would do. I would tend to keep the information because I would just tend to keep that. Over here, we have statistics information over here, okay? So this tells me that this particular recurring charge code against this customer has been total invoice. There's 5 invoices for that amount. Okay. I ran them for 5 weeks. Okay. Now, the whole schedule thing inside of recurring charges, well, you also have the option under periodic processing to create a recurring charge batch, okay, right here. Now, what we did is we let the schedule run it. We told it, okay, go ahead and process it, and it just processed them all. Well, here I can do it on a one-off basis. Like I say, I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to do it by recurring charge or by customer number. The same process holds true, exists over in AP for vendors and in the GL. So if I did it by customer number and I said, well, I'm going to run Bargain Mart again. And what this will do is this will run all recurring charges that need to be run as of January 31st for this customer. Now, if we looked at our recurring charges, there's two of them. This one, that's associated 1100, and this one is associated 1100. Okay. Now, and by the way, I could create, if I wanted to run this recurring charge code against another customer, I need to create another recurring charge code like this. Okay. So anyway, so the point is that if I said this as it's set right now, and the method, I want to create a new batch or add to an existing batch. Okay, so if I said create a new batch, so if there were, remember there's two recurring charge codes against customer 1100. If this date, if it hadn't been run as of this date, then it would run them both. Right? Now, as it has, as it's been, it's not going to generate anything, I don't think. Yeah, no invoices were generated. Okay. To get anything, I'm going to have to advance this because they'd already been run for a while. In fact, one of them, one of them was a weekly deal. If I ran it up to, I think February 3rd, so if I set it to February 17th, it will create two of them. 4 invoices, right? Okay, sorry. I had two. I think they were both set to weekly, maybe. Yes, they were both weekly. Anyway, the point is that I created 2 entries for each of the weekly entries. So, and I can do this on an as-needed basis, but keeping in mind that it won't create anything that has already been created in the past. So now it won't create those invoices anytime before the 17th of February in this case. You have to go forward. Okay. Let's see. Now, and likewise, I said that you can create the same thing in accounts payable. On the periodic processing, we create recurring batch. It's the same concept. The run date, if they'd already been run up to this date, then it won't create anything. You can do it by recurring charge, recurring payable code, or vendor number. If you do it by vendor, it does it all the codes that are associated with that vendor for that schedule. And I would typically create a new batch rather than add an existing batch. If I want to add an existing batch, it wants me to select what batch I'm adding it to. Okay. And finally, down under periodic processing under GL, create recurring entries batch, same thing. I select the recurring charge, the date that I want to run by, and whether I want to create a new batch or not. Now, I only have one active one, which is prepaid insurance. And if I advance this, I think I did the first 3 months. So if I advance this out to April, I will go May 1st. I create a new batch, process, created 2 entries. That's correct. It should be March and April and May, I think. So if I go out there, so again, you can create them as needed. You don't have to use the schedule. Yep, April and May. Good. One other thing about the schedule, or about the entry itself, rather. I tell it, you know, this is doing a specific date, and it's associated with this weekly schedule. And that schedule is basically defining when my next invoice date is going to be. So even though I'm not using the schedule just now to automatically create the recurring charge, it's still, the schedule is still driving as to when the next invoice date will be, because it's based on that Monday in the weekly schedule. So just to know that. All right. Well, I think I'm going to sign off. And if anybody has any questions, you're welcome to ask a couple of questions. Got a few minutes left here. Okay, Kim. Well, Kim left me a message saying that she found it helpful and she's going to play with it now. Well, there you go. Okay. Well, I'm going to sign off and wish everybody a good rest of your day, and hope you found it useful. Take care now.